Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing what I believe to be the strongest core breaker in the Great League Remix Cup after 1 week of play, and that is Mudshot Unova Stunfisk. There's been a couple meta trends that in my view have made it very favorable conditions for Stunfisk. First off, a lot less Gligar I've seen overall, and a lot of cores revolved around the pairing of a Mandibuzz or Mantine with a Magnezone, an Empoleon, or a Steelix. And that core pairing just gets absolutely destroyed by Ufisk. So today, I'm going to be showcasing two teams featuring Unova Stunfisk that I had some nice results with. The first team is an ABA-style team that is a bit weak to a Gligar lead, and we are met with a terrible lead, Annihilate into Kofagrigus. Mantine safe switch answered by Magnezone, and I am in hard counter city. Oh my goodness. I will fire off the Water Pulse. Opponent is going to commit the shield. Their thinking is they can shield it up, exit with double Wild Charge and quite a lot of energy, and get the shield back from the Annihilate. But I'm not sending in the Annihilate, I'm sending in Magnezone's worst nightmare of Unova Stunfisk. They go for the Wild Charge. That does absolutely nothing. Triple resisting that Wild Charge. Opponent goes for another Wild Charge. Unova Stunfisk does not care, completely neutralizing the Magnet. But unfortunately for me, there's a hard counter on the back. There's Ferrothorn, so I'm triple hard countered, but I'm not out of the fight yet. I send in the Annihilate. They throw a Bullet Seed before switching, so I get a 2 counter head start. And now I fire off the Shadow Ball on charge attack priority to the move, but they get the shield call right. They don't try and call a Night Slash bait, and that complicates the math in the end game. My opponent is going to be able to force the second shield with a Dark Pulse, as Dark Pulse will be able to outpace. But the good news is, I still have HP. I'm going to be able to make the Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is definitely going to be able to get rid of the Kofagrigus. My opponent should be 2 Bullet Seeds away from their move, so I'm going to throw 3 counters, switch into the Stunfisk, and catch a super effective move. But this is how much of a beast Stunfisk is. Stunfisk absorbs that super effective damage, not worried about it whatsoever, and despite the fact that we were completely triple hard countered in this game, we're going to be able to get the win. That's one thing that I really liked about the team. It felt very, very flexible in a game where, we had a Kofagrigus onto an Annihilate, a Magnezone onto a Mantine, and a Grass type onto Unova Stunfisk. I'm able to get the win. Great lead in the next match, as I am going to lead the Annihilate into Steelix. Opponent safe switches Mandibuzz, and this is another one of those cores that we were talking about. The Steel+Flying cores that Unova Stunfisk does so well against. Even though I do have Mudshot, Unova Stunfisk still does quite well against the Flyers, because of course Discharge will hit for super effective damage. And Unova Stunfisk is just an absolute bulky monster. This thing tanks Dark Pulses for days, and I'm just going to keep spamming out these Discharges. Discharge will connect. I'm still not in a range where Dark Pulse will threaten a KO, so this is a very comfortable no shield for me. Opponent baits with an Aerial Ace. That works out nicely for me. And they're going for another Aerial Ace, and I still don't have to shield. Not committing to the Dark Pulse after they baited once, and now this is probably Mud Bomb range, but to be safe, I go for the Discharge, because I have a Discharge plus a Mud Bomb loaded, so if they send in the Steelix, then I'm going to get some very nice, super effective damage onto that Steelix, or grab a shield. They send in the Steelix. Unfortunately, their game lags by 1 turn, so they end up getting denied their fast move. So I'm just going to not attack and let them KO me, as that's what should have happened. I send in the Annihilate. It's Giratina in the back, and this is just a guaranteed win. I bait with the Night Slash. Even though they call it, this is still winning for me, because a Night Slash puts them into Aerial Ace range. So throwing a Night Slash there is basically just a guaranteed win condition. If they shield, then I'm up a shield, and I'm just in a winning spot. Or if they no shield, then I can just Aerial Ace them. So, in a very good spot overall. I'm going to call it in case they go for the Ominous Wind bait. They do not, but I can tank a Shadow Ball. Mantine is pretty bulky. I go for a slight undercharge on the Aerial Ace, but realistically, it's not going to matter. They are going to get a farm down, but it's not going to be able to save them. I can just shield up and counter down the Giratina. Their clock is up, so they can send in the Steelix, but Steelix just gets knocked out by the Shadow Ball. So Shadow Ball is going to be good night to the Steelix. In comes the Giratina. Giratina making one final charge attack, but it's not going to be enough, because I have a shield remaining, and my Annihilate gets the counter down the Ghost type. Moving to the next match, hitting Annihilate into Serperior, and this is a core breaker for the team on the lead, as Serperior does pretty well into Annihilate, and it absolutely crushes the Unova Stunfisk in the back. But the good news is, a Serperior on the lead will typically mean that Unova Stunfisk has play in the back. so I am going to farm up quite a bit, try and go for the CMP tie with the Night Slash bait. I get the shield, I get the boost. It turns out it wasn't a CMP tie. They try for the farm down, I make it to a boosted Shadow Ball, and I'm able to grab both shields from my opponent. And now I send in Mantine, opponent not pivoting out, which is a bit of a surprise. But I'm very okay with that, because I just need to get Superior off the field, and then hopefully Unova Stunfisk can do well in the end game. I decided to shield once, as I do want to preserve a little bit of HP on the Mantine. I'll have to see what my opponent wants to send in. They send in Carbink. This is very okay. I can get some nice damage with a Water Pulse, and then I have Unova Stunfisk up a shield. In comes Unova Stunfisk in the back. It's a Steelix, and it's all over for my opponent in a blink of an eye. I guess they didn't want to pivot because of a fear of a Water Pulse onto the Steelix, but by not pivoting, then they just get swept by Unova Stunfisk in the back. Mud Bomb connects. They try and overfarm by one more. They're unable to get a move. Back in comes the Carbink, and they resign the match. Tricky lead in the next match, Annihilate versus Shadow Alolan Marowak. Alolan Marowak used to be a meta staple, but now, unfortunately, it's basically entirely outclassed by Skeledirge. But Skeledirge is banned in this meta, so you do see a couple Marowaks. I'm stoked to catch the Bone Club there, that's awesome, but then my happiness is short-lived as in comes a Magnezone. Magnezone will be hit with the Water Pulse. Water Pulse gets no shielded. And because I caught the Bone Club, I can't even make the Aerial Ace. They just get a full farm down, but their energy goes nowhere into the Stunfisk. I can just send in the Stunfisk. Also, this opponent has zero respect for the Stunfisk. A Stunfisk lead, and they just lose, because they have the Alolan Marowak and the Magnezone, which both get destroyed. But there is the Stunfisk counter. It's a Frostlass in the back. I'm going to throw the slightly less efficient move, but the harder hitting move of Discharge, switch into Annihilate. Opponent sends in the Marowak. I have so much energy. I'm going for the bait here. Let's see, do they call it? They do call it, and that complicates things just a little bit. I will fire off this Night Slash. Opponent is going to commit the shield, and now they're probably just going to go straight Bone Club in this situation. I will commit the shield. They do go for the Bone Club. Annihilate, going to fire off another Night Slash. At this point, I'm realizing they can probably just let this go and try and farm down with the Frostlass. In comes the Frostlass. Frostlass cannot get the farm down. Annihilate, able to hang on 1 HP. Night Slash forces the shield, and now it all comes down to this. I should live in Avalanche. Not by much, but I am going to no-shield their triple Axle, and calling that is going to win me this game. If I shielded the first move, a boosted triple Axle, plus the boosted Powder Snows, I would have been in trouble, but by no shield in the first, we set ourselves up for success. Another game where we're basically triple countered, but we're able to play out of it and take the win. Hopping into the final match of this team before we switch to Team 2, and we see a familiar lead. Annihilate versus Superior. Superior overfarming quite a bit. Last time I decided to let it go, but since they built up to a frenzy, I am going to respect it. And I'm going to build up to the Shadow Ball and bait with the Night Slash. Night Slash gets the shield, and the boost at Annihilate is off to the races. You absolutely love to see it. I commit the shield. Opponent goes for the Aerial Ace. And now the question will be, can I get the counter down? The answer is yes. I have so much energy. They send in Jellicent, and I immediately make a mistake. Baiting here is not a good thing, because my opponent has high incentive to try and call a bait. But the good news is I can make 3 Night Slashes before they even make a move. And I get another boost. You have got to be kidding me. Annihilate every so often can have games like this where it just completely dominates. In the back, it's Dugong. Oh my goodness, can we get the full sweep? Annihilate, please. I know a Night Slash doesn't hit very hard, but this is quad boosted. The Night Slash plus the counter KOs. That's a true Annihilate 1v3 sweep. We move to team number 2, and we see a truly terrible lead, leading the Unova Stunfisk into Gligar. I save switch into Dugong, and my opponent responds, of all things, with a Steelix. Steelix is a very poor answer to Dugong, so this tells me the opponent is just extremely weak to a Dugong pivot, which works out very nicely for me, as they can go for Psychic Fang to lower my defense, but I was already able to grab a shield with an Icy Wind bait, and now I can start firing off drill runs. This team is more balanced against a Gligar lead. As you see there, I forgot to put on Do Not Disturb, so I am forced to turn on Do Not Disturb really quick, but the Zapdos, of course, is able to resist all charge attacks from the Gligar, and then the Dugong, of course, being the hard counter. This time, I'm able to grab both shields from my opponent, and I'm thinking, you know what? Even though I'm not winning Switch, I can probably just, with 2 Shield Shadow Zapdos, do well into basically anything not named Carbink in the back. So I'm just going to play it like that. If they're willing to double shield, I am just going to save the shields for Zapdos, and we'll see what happens. I'm able to get the farm down. I'm going to send in the Zapdos. In the back, it's Empoleon. So in the back, the opponent was extremely weak to Electric as a whole. Thunderbolt picks up the KO. Back in comes the Gligar. They realize they do not have a win con, and they resign the match. We see a tricky lead in the next match, Unova Stunfisk versus Dugong. If I had Thundershock, this matchup would be better, but personally, I do like Mudshot for this meta, as the fast move pressure against something like a Magnezone is just too valuable to pass up. In this instance, I'm able to switch out and get a catch onto my own Dugong, catching the Icy Wind. My opponent sends out a Hypno of all things. Hypno, honestly, a Pokemon that makes sense to run in this meta, because with the punches, you have like a Thunder Punch for a Mantine, an Ice Punch for a Gligar. So I do think, in comparison to a lot of metas, that Hypno play actually does make quite a bit of sense here. They land a move, I'm firing off an Icy Wind, just looking to continue to debuff them and force them to throw energy. That's the important thing here, is I just want them to throw energy. It is going to be the second Thunder Punch. They're now heavily debuffed. I'm just going to look for quite a lot of energy on my Unova Stunfisk. My opponent will fire off a move. Is it going to be the Ice Punch? Yes, it is. The Ice Punch connects, still doing some pretty solid damage. I'm going to go for an Undercharge, as I would love to get some extra energy, but I don't undercharge enough. Are they going to send back in the Dugong? They're pretty low, so I'm going to go for a bait here. I'm going to go for a bait, going for the Mud Bomb. Opponent calls the bait, and I'm immediately in trouble. This is not good. And then that's followed up by a frame drop as well. Yikes. I'm just going to try and win with Zapdos now. Zapdos looking for the farm down, gets the farm down, but I'm so low. In the back, it's Charizard, and it all comes down to this. Can I survive the wing attacks? The wing attacks are resisted, but Shadow Zapdos has absolutely zero bulk. Zapdos gets the back-to-back. The question is, does the wing attack that just snuck through KO? The Drill Peck gets shielded. It does not, and Shadow Zapdos, Electric in the end game, taking out the Charizard. And we get the 2 shield flex as well. Great lead in the next match, Unova Stunfisk for Shadow Empoleon. I'm going to look to overfarm in case they go for a catch, and there's the catch attempt onto Gligar. Gligar getting answered by Dugong, and just everything in my favor alignment-wise in this game. This is quite nice. They go for the Aerial Ace. They can potentially make a dig if they're a high-ranked Shadow Gligar, so I'm not going to risk it. I'm just going to fire off the Icy Wind, as I know this way I can keep switch advantage, and if they send in Empoleon, it gets very uncomfortable for them. They're going to send in the Annihilate. Maybe I should have overfarmed more before throwing this, but then it risks them going for a Night Slash and me not getting this move off. So even though they do get an extra counter because of that debuff, you know what? They're debuffed. And I can just save 2 shields for Unova Stunfisk, and I should just be winning. Ice Punch will be no shielded. I'm just going to farm up a ton. Opponent sends in the Empoleon, and I'm just going to commit the shield, because I can live a Shadow Hydro Cannon, but it does a massive amount of damage. I clicked on the Discharge. In hindsight, I probably should have gone for the Mud Bomb, so we'll go for a slight Undercharge, as that will allow me a very nice farm down. I can exit with quite a bit of energy, and I can just Mud Bomb the Annihilate. I have a move stored on the Zapdos, so there's just not a win con for my opponent here, and they realize that, so they're just going to let this go. Unfortunately, that was a game that was primarily decided off alignment. We've got an amazing lead in the next match, Unova Stunfisk versus Mantine. I'm going to look to overfarm in case they go for a catch, and they get a catch, catching the Discharge onto their own Unova Stunfisk. But that's what I get for being sloppy with my mechanics. I didn't wait the turn to check and see if they were going to throw the fast move or not, and since I don't do that, I get punished with a catch, and they're actually a Thunder Shock Unova Stunfisk, which is very unfortunate. So I had basically the best possible lead, but I've played this very poorly so far. Opponent will fire off a move. I should barely take a Discharge at -1, so I'm going to let it go. They go for the Mud Bomb, and I should have just clicked Drill Run there. I should have just clicked the Drill Run, because by throwing one more Ice Shard and trying to throw on good timing, unfortunately, they're able to make another Mud Bomb and get the shield back. And that's definitely not ideal. After the Icy Wind, I am able to farm down, which is nice, but Mantine is going to get energy, and Mantine, if it has a massive energy head start, can actually threaten the Unova Stunfisk with a Water Pulse or a potential Ice Beam. So they are now debuffed. I'm going to send in the Stunfisk. In the back, they have a Quag, and this is worrying. Quag has a lot of energy. I think I'm just going to call that it's an Aqua Tail, and it is just the Aqua Tail. and now my opponent is going to immediately fire off Aqua Tail number 2. So calling that I wasn't the Stone Edge was a massive call. I'm going to look to overfarm. My opponent now has another Aqua Tail. I'm expecting him to throw it immediately, so I'm just going to undertap the Drill Peck and force charge attack priority. That is very important. As now, my opponent, instead of shielding, they're actually just going to trust Mantine to win this game. They're going to trust Mantine. They go for the Aerial Ace. They're going to get the farm down. And the question is, can they get to 2 Water Pulses or Ice Beams? And Disaster Strikes. A frame drop makes me get denied. I don't get my fast move through, and it ends in charge attack priority. I would have lost anyway, because even with one more fast move, I would have lost CMP on the second one. But man, I just played that so terribly. Hopping into the final match, going up against the world champion, we have the best possible lead. As you see, I try and switch into the Zapdos when they send in the Annihilate. The game doesn't register the tap, so I'm forced to tap it again. And I've given this Annihilate a massive energy head start. The good news is that this alignment keeps the Zapdos away from the Magnezone. The bad news, however, is with this energy lead, I'm not going to be able to keep Switch. I'm going to no-shield the Night Slash, that does a ton of damage, but giving up Switch is honestly not terrible as long as I get the final shield. Because if I can get the final shield, then I can threaten the Drill Run from the Dugong onto the Magnezone later in the game. I send in the Stunfisk farming up a ton of energy. I can tank whatever he throws, so I'm just going to let this through. It is going to be a Night Slash bait, and now I'm going to go for double Mud Bomb since Discharge will not be enough to knock out. I go for the Mud Bomb, that's going to get him low, and I fire off Mud Bomb number 2, and we'll have to see what does he have in the back. He's obviously not bringing back in the Magnezone. In the back, it's a Mandibuzz. I'm going to farm up Switch in the middle of his move, so I get the energy head start to outpace the Magnezone to a Drill Run. He realizes he's getting outpaced, and he resigns the match. All in all, I think that Unova Stunfisk is just an amazing core breaker in the current meta. Granted, the meta has the ability to change from one week to another, but at the current moment, there's a lot of teams that are really weak to it, and it really feels like it can put in a lot of work. And as we saw a couple games back, there was a trainer running the Thundershock variant to great success as well. Personally, I was a fan of the fast move pressure from Mudshot onto stuff like Magnezone, but Thundershock definitely has its value as well. Being able to hit the Mantine for double super effective fast move damage as well, because as we know, Mantine is absolutely everywhere in this meta. It is completely inescapable. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.